Reporting late night here on election night, I'm your host Tyler Ward. In our latest segment here to find out who is going to be taking home Juan Soto, who will be the first here to 270 between the Mets and the Yankees. Thank you. And the word is... who the hell knows? All I gotta know and all I gotta say is, folks, we have news in Mets land that Juan Soto is not only a coveted target for them, but yes, they're going all out. They're super aggressive, and they may have just been, in fact, the first team to contact Juan Soto this offseason. In tonight's show, as you guys initially react in the comments down below, that was corny, and I know, I understand. I'm also a dad now, so expect more of the corniness, expect more of the dad jokes, those kind of things, everybody. But I want to hear from you, Mets fans, on the latest with Juan Soto before we break down the reports, where they're coming from, ultimately how the Mets were not only potentially first in reaching out to Juan Soto, but what is the overall latest from him? What is the latest with the Yankees on their potential pursuit of, yes, Pete Alonso? What did Brian Cashman have to say when asked about the Mets' pursuit of Juan Soto? David Stearns' latest remarks as of today, and then some, is what we're going to be breaking down, everybody. Appreciate you guys chiming in, as always, in our latest segment presented by BetUS, America's #1 sportsbook. Check them out for all your sports betting needs, folks, by heading over to betus.com.pa and using Wardy's promo code YouTube150. That way you too get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, $125 on your second, and your third up to $2,000 for all your sports betting needs. And yes, guys, if you do have interest in getting involved in the political scale, that's not what we're talking about tonight. But if you are, feel free to hammer there on BetUS, as you can literally pick between one candidate or the other who you think is ultimately winning this one in the end. Again, hopefully, fingers crossed, Juan Soto lands here with the Mets, but we have yet to find that out. I think it's going to take a little bit longer than what is currently going on here in the States, at least. But all right, guys, let's get into this, and I want to first give a massive shout out to a longtime follow of mine, that being at Mets News Rumors there on X, as I saw this scrolling on the timeline earlier today, and then I was tagged in over the past couple hours by some people, and this is from ESPN Radio, so let's just listen in and hear what they have to say.
Yankees. Now, talking to different people in the last couple of days, the Mets they were the first team to call, is what I was told, and they are being super aggressive with Juan Soto. So I think...
So the super aggressive aspect shouldn't surprise anybody, but obviously when you're hearing these things in the airwaves, especially on ESPN, that's always a good thing. Now, I did see that everyone's favorite ESPN, beat writer, talking head Buster Olney said absolutely nobody in Metsland, at least, did speak to Jeff Passan earlier today on his podcast, and Jeff Passan did shed some thoughts and some light on the Juan Soto sweepstakes for the Mets, and did basically say how the Mets are certainly going to be heavily involved there. We know that to begin with, but we also know that they're not going to be putting their chips in every basket when we look at the deep end of acquiring talent. So say Juan Soto, say Polar Bear Pete Alonso, say every ace. Do not expect the Mets to be acting a drunken sailor. Yes, they're going to be allocating plenty of money, but this is a David Stearns that is not the guy that's familiar nor known for really building an entire roster construction, a heavy one at that, throughout the free agent market, because it's not sustainable, and the Mets know that themselves. And the reason why I bring up that in particular is just because even though we're hearing this from ESPN, you're going to be hearing varying opinions there from ESPN as well. But what we at least hear through ESPN Radio on ESPN Baseball tonight is that the Mets have not only been super aggressive for Juan Soto, which again is far from surprising, but they have also been apparently the first team to contact Juan Soto. Now, we came out with a video just a couple days ago. If you guys haven't checked it out, make sure you do. I'm breaking down the Mets already talking to Juan Soto, as they were apparently the first team now out of at least half a dozen, if not more, reaching out to Juan Soto and his services with Scott Boras this offseason. And we all know how amazing Juan Soto is. We're not going to go on a complete tangent as to what exactly you're getting with someone like him, but we know that when it comes to Juan Soto, the reason why he is such a hot commodity is because he's arguably the best talent at the free agent market that I will ever experience so far as a baseball fan. That is how coveted, not only with the age, with the star power, and everything in between that you get with Juan Soto and his services at this point in his career right here, right now, denying that $443 million contract extension with a decade plus on it with the Nationals 3 years ago as a 23-year-old, a bet on himself, rightfully so. And Soto, again, just to debrief there on the numbers, as you guys can see down below, when you have 41 home runs, 109 RBIs in your first and hopefully only year there in the Bronx with the Yankees, a 288 average, a 419 on base percentage, a 569 slug, you're clearly doing something right. A World Series champ as a teenager, a two-time World Series a guy who's been in the dance at least 2 times. Sadly, didn't win it all for himself, at least this past year, but not for lack of effort on his end, more so on the other aspects of this Yankees team. Accounted for himself being 8 WAR, meaning that he himself accounted for 8 individual wins, essentially through wins above replacement, a 180 WRC plus, almost double better than the average batter in baseball. Simply put, 100 means you're a league average batter, 200 means you're double that. So yes, he's really, really good, Juan Soto. He's going to continue to dominate, and for everyone and anyone that complains about the defense, and this is the final thing I'll say on that, defense, subpar defense means nothing when the offense alone is carrying him the way that he is to the degree. The fact that he is a negative defensive player and accounted for 8+ WAR this past season is all you need to know. Sometimes it just doesn't matter if you're subpar defensively when your bat is that short of a surefire guaranteed thing, and that's exactly that with himself and his shuffle, that being in Juan Soto. But as we continue to break down Soto and the latest on him, let's also get into some comments not only regarding Juan Soto here through ESPN, but let's also hear some comments from Brian Cashman himself, and then David Stearns talking about the latest with this Mets free agency, including some comments there with SNY's Andy Martino. So let's get into this from Brian Cashman. When asked today, I believe from Mike Puma, just from the voice I heard here, when asked what kind of threat are the Mets there to pursue and potentially land Juan Soto, GM there for the Yanks, Brian Cashman, replies with the following.
Only a handful of teams that realistically could afford a player like Soto. The Mets specifically, what kind of threat do you think they pose?
I mean, I don't, it's hard to say. I mean, I know they want to win. They're in a large market with us. They had a taste of success this year, and they want to, move the needle even more forward. So, and the best way to do that is get, import quality players to what you already have. So that's what they, and anybody interested in winning and being the last team standing, that's what it's all about, is trying to find great players and add it to your mix.
So I commend Cashman for replying the way that he did. I think it's just those really light blue eyes that make me think this way, but especially with the deadpan stare that he has, all I hear is, literally, hello, darkness, my old friend, if you guys know the joke that I'm about to make, because as soon as you mention the Mets and with the Yankees and Cashman, obviously they're not going to be happy to have that conversation, especially knowing that this is a very different situation than one a couple years ago when Aaron Judge hit the free agent market. Now, I've spoken about this on the past in our live streams, and I'll say it again here for any Mets fan, Yankee fan, whoever's listening and watching this wants to hear. Let's not forget, back when Aaron Judge hit the free agent market a couple years ago, the Mets did not heavily pursue Aaron Judge, not because of a lack of interest, but more so because of the under-the-table gentleman's agreement that we had between ownership from the Mets and the Yankees. And this goes back to when Steve Cohen first was looking for approval from a certain amount of owners there across Major League Baseball to officially become a Major League Baseball owner there with the Mets after buying them from the Wilpons. And the Yankees were one of the many teams that agreed to say, yes, we will welcome you into the bigs. Now, apparently, and again, this is just something I've heard across the industry over the past couple years, it has been reported to a degree as well, even though that there's been comments to say refute that, especially obviously from just like people at the helm themselves, understandably so. But they have said how there was a supposed gentleman's agreement as to, okay, if we're going to allow Steve to come in as ownership, knowing that he's going to come in and really shell out more dollars than we have seen, and it's really going to change the dynamic of New York baseball for the foreseeable future, the Yankees, what they at least were hoping and looking for was at least an understanding when it came to Judge, that is their guy, that is their captain, that there will be a mutual respect from one owner to the other to not overstep there and allow Judge to be the Yankees' problem and trying to bring back, and not something for the Mets to go out of their way to try to do and cause a bloodbath early on in Steve Cohen's early ownership. And as we fast forward a couple off seasons later, this is not the same circumstance, as Juan Soto is only a one-year New York Yankee, as a guy that Steve Cohen has tried to pursue and land going back to the 2021 season when he offered Mike Rizzo what we saw there whenever Juan Soto was drafted, 2021, 2022, whichever year it was, because I'm blanking at the moment. But the Mets offered a lot of key prospects headlined by guys like Alvarez, Vientos, Mauricio, etc. And Mike Rizzo and the Nationals said no because they didn't want to trade in-house in the division there, rather, in the NL East, understandably so. But fast forward all these years later, just like how the Dodgers did not spend big time when Trey Turner became a free agent a couple off seasons ago, they did that knowing that they were going to heavily pursue Ohtani and Yamamoto and basically make sure that they weren't bested. Mets, after pretty much cruising last offseason, not overspending in any way, shape, or form, are now unleashing the floodgates and have an opportunity now where if they are going to allocate a lot of dollars with one singular player, they hope and hopefully a lot of us Mets fans expect that to be one Juan Soto, which is why you're going to have the remarks that you do from Brian Cashman here. And speaking of remarks there, especially from guys at the helm, let's go from the Yankees back to the Mets and hear what David Stearns has to say from his interview here with Andy Martino earlier today.
Where you are right now with all the money coming off the books, could you see a world in which you are able to give multiple free agents, say, nine-figure deals this offseason? Do you have that kind of flexibility if the fits were right?
You know, I think it's very difficult for me to speculate at this stage of the offseason what any potential deals are going to look like, how we're going to allocate our resources, frankly, even what positions we might target. I think I've been open that starting pitching is a priority and will continue to be a priority. We've got a lot of innings we need to fill with potentially departing free agents, and so that will be a big part of our offseason. But beyond that, where exactly in the salary structure they fall, whether it's via free agency or trade, a lot of that still remains to be seen. And frankly, as we've seen before, off seasons evolve, right. And off seasons take a long time. Not all of it's going to be done in November, December. Off seasons really carry on through spring training, right. And I would expect they would for us as well.
So good comments there from David, per usual. And I got him paused with a ton sticking out. So let's get away from that for a second. But we know that when it comes to David Stearns and how they approach this offseason, it's not only to fortify the rotation there that they fully anticipate and will do and to rectify things in the bullpen, but it really comes down to how do they want to get creative about allocating their dollars along with potentially evaluating the trade market. And as the Mets figure out now how they want to go about their position player makeup, especially with guys in Juan Soto, who is at the tip of the top of their list with their pursuit, it's going to be fascinating to watch not only A, how long the Juan Soto pursuit takes, B, how heavy the Mets find themselves in it beyond what we already know to this point, and hopefully it only changes for the better for us Mets fans. I would love to see Soto in Queens for a million different reasons. But then we also go down the list here, and then you have to figure out, okay, depending on the length and depending on what the status is, what happens in the Soto pursuit, ultimately dictates what you do there for the remainder of the offseason and the players you potentially miss out on say alternative options as corner outfield DH bats that the Mets could consider, not named Juan Soto. But then I'm also bearing in mind, and you guys should too, that this isn't about so much about trying to potentially find an alternative route should the Mets not land Soto, as it is Juan Soto is such an anomaly that you really can't even put him in the same class when we talk about Teoscar Hernandez or Anthony Santander. These big bats, they're looking for big paydays this offseason after one winning the World Series and the other having 40-plus home runs. They're leading the way for the Orioles in many aspects. Those are two guys that would be great in this Mets lineup for sure, but those are also guys I can definitely see David Stearns not overspending on because he doesn't have the interest in doing it. Really doesn't see it as it being worthwhile down the road and how it could be more so of maybe a Starling Marte-esque investment where you don't know what you're getting after, say, the first year or two. Love Marte, and I will appreciate everything that he did for the Mets down the stretch this season, but we know he's not getting any younger, and we know he's going to be a liability at times for the Mets outside of his amazing postseason heroics, which I will always appreciate as a fan. But simply put, we know that Stearns is going to be going down various routes here, but what happens with Juan Soto, first and foremost, is what's really going to dictate a lot of other aspects of this offseason for this Mets team. So, Mets fans, I definitely want to know your initial reactions in the comments down below. How do you feel about the Mets apparently being the first to contact Juan Soto? Again, color me shocked, far from surprised there. However, I'm still very happy to hear it transpire. Hopefully that's in fact true, because as we go on with this offseason, we're going to try to weed out what is credible and what is not with reporting, because the very unfortunate thing is even when you have the most credible people out there, sometimes things just aren't as accurate as you initially believe them to be. The best people in the business get it wrong each and every year, so don't be surprised when people to far less magnitudes of status find themselves in that same exact realm. So when it comes to Juan Soto, expect a lot pretty much every single week until he makes a decision, but just because it's a lot doesn't mean that we should take it all with more than a grain of salt. This, I think, was a worthy discussion to have, because anything on the positive front with Juan Soto that we hear is never a bad thing, and from someone who clearly seems like that they have trusted sources to a degree there to say that there for ESPN Baseball Tonight Radio there, not complaining. But let's see what continues to happen for this Mets team. And as David Stearns made remarks earlier, let's just highlight a couple more for each and every one of you.
So with starting pitching, I mean, really around the diamond, you went with a lot of one-year deals or 1 years with an option in which there was upside. Do you think that is a perennial kind of approach for you? Is that something that will apply this year beyond jumping into a lot of long-term commitments? Is that a stylistic thing for David Stearns, or is that unique to last offseason?
I would say I think it's always going to be part of our strategy. There are likely generally going to be players on shorter-term deals that we think are good players, and maybe they're coming off of an injury, or maybe they're coming off of a team that used them a little bit differently, or maybe they're coming off of just a down performance year, and we feel like we want to give them a shot. And a lot of times it's in the best interest of that player to take a shorter term deal, so that he may be able to rebuild his value and go on and get a longer term deal after a successful season. So I think that's always going to be part of our offseason approach. There are certain years where it may not be exclusively our offseason approach, but I would expect it to be a part of it.
And that's an important quote there from Stearns, because this has been, again, common knowledge, especially on the shorter term front. But as he alluded to, and I want to reiterate this for Mets fans that wonder, why do the Mets sign some of the no names that they do, either for infield, for bullpen especially? It's for reasons like this, because Stearns has an uncanny ability, unlike a lot of other respective GMs and Pobos in the game, to really find the best talent where others aren't looking, because of options A, these are guys coming off of down years, options B, coming off of down years because of injury, option C, guys that, honestly just didn't look like the right fit, had inflated numbers, but really, again, had a good stretch, good sample size, all the peripherals were there, but it just wasn't the right team fit for one reason or the other. And team fit is a heavy point of emphasis, both for short and long-term deals, that Stearns will be bearing in mind heavily this offseason, as I'm sure he already is, to a far greater degree than I could fathom as a fan. So that is what I'm going to leave you with, everybody. That's the latest on Juan Soto. That's the latest from Brian Cashman and his remarks on them. And a last little tidbit, because I did mean to mention this earlier, and I'm a schmuck for not saying it prior, so I sincerely apologize to each and every one of you guys for exactly that. I don't have it pulled up right now, but yes, it shouldn't be surprised. The Mets have officially heard, as we have all heard, Pete Alonso has been in contact with the Yankees. The Yankees have reached out to Polar Bear Pete Alonso. We may touch on that more here on the channel in the coming days, so be on the lookout for that. But simply put, especially after they have parted ways with Anthony Rizzo, who they could bring back on a lesser AAV should the interest still be there. Alonso, though, again, with the potential to get it back big time this offseason. If Soto does end up coming to Queens, I don't think any Mets fan is complaining about it basically being a one-for-one swap should that happen. I know I'm not, as much as I love the Polar Bear. However, I understand the controversy that comes with it. I also understand the thought of just being absolutely disgusted that man and Polar Bear Pete Alonso being in pinstripes, but that being in Yankee stripes. No one wants to see that. So that's what I'll leave you with, everybody. Hopefully nothing transpires beyond a simple check-in. Until then, though, folks, until we come out with more content on the latest in Mets land all throughout the week, every single week, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button on your way out. Let me know your thoughts down below. As always, no matter what, let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.